So now we will go to Brett Isaac. He is the co-founder and executive chairman of Navajo Power. And I think that you are going to talk about the history, and then you are going to talk about a little bit about the company, okay, and how it developed. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Shea Brett Isaac, Shea Kiani Nishina, Chini Bush's Chief, is Ani Bashijara, Tola Nashimilla. Tewe, Kisina, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brett Isaac. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Navajo Power. I've had a lot of titles, so that just, and the thing, I tend to talk more bluntly, so excuse me, because part of the reason I started Navajo Power was really getting frustrated with, a lot of conversations happening, but very little deployment. Seeing these things on screens, but not seeing them in action was something that was very prevalent in my community. Growing up in the Navajo Nation, I always say I grew up in scarcity. I grew up in economic insecurity. Like I lived, the kid of a teacher and a heavy equipment operator. And so learning how to survive in those kind of settings builds up a resiliency in you, but you also witness a lot of things along the way. You see your families and your communities trying to find opportunities, trying to build, pathways out of the challenges that they're facing. And so starting Navajo Power was really about a frustration that grew into an opportunity, because I saw my governments and enterprises all attempting different models, and I felt that I could build something to be a companion to those initiatives. I could go to the private sector and bring all the value that exists in those places into a space that tribes have yet to really explore into. And so creating Navajo Power was about building, the deployment lane for all of these conversations that we've been having for a long time. We're dealing with the shifting landscape. In the Navajo Nation, about 6 years ago, and you heard from the Hopi presentation too, that Navajo Generating Station was the largest coal-fired power plant west of the Mississippi. And it was demolished a few years ago, but in that facility there was 800 jobs. That majority of them were going to natives, Navajos, Hopis, and others. There was revenues, there was economies, there was things that were upended overnight. And in the wake of these things, we're still struggling to get our footing to recover from the impacts of these things. And so it was seeing that, but being in the community at the time that this was happening, feeling that pressure about where do we go from here? What do we do next? Who's going to champion this going forward? And so I really brought myself, to this space because my community, when I got out of college, challenged me to start a solar company. They had been talking about getting energy into these really remote areas in the community that we couldn't do with traditional distributed generation. And so they gave me this business plan, and I've learned something in tribal communities that if you touch something, you have to carry it all the way to the end. Otherwise, who else is going to champion these things? And so I started this in 2009 out of college, and in terms of where this journey for me has gone, but I had to learn about solar. I had to, upgrade my skill set to be able to install these. And over the years, I've been involved in putting solar in all kinds of places, and I probably have connected with some of you, and you might not have known it. During the No DAPL movement, I built solar trailers and took them up to Standing Rock. And if you were in any of those camps, you probably used my solar to charge your phone. I went to Mauna Kea a few years ago and helped the elders there that were protesting the telescope on Mauna Kea and helped them build solar, trained a bunch of local Hawaiians on how to construct these energy systems so that they could put power in remote areas. And last year, I went to Maui at the invitation of the Native Hawaiians that were impacted by the fires in Lanai to build solar in replacing the energy systems that were lost in the fire so that these families can continue to rebuild and recover from the impacts of these things. I've lived in the deployment lane my entire career because I've always been frustrated, again, with a lot of conversation, but very little action behind these things. And it's difficult. I admit there's been really challenging obstacles to overcome. I've built a team with Navajo Power who's I say we're small, but we're tactical. You know, we punch very high above our weight because we've been able to generate all of these things basically out of thin air. You know, we don't have any backing from any governmental entities. We went to the private sector and we decided we were going to raise capital and build up our initiatives. And this is the team I have now, but I also have a lot of alumni that have gone to various different parts that have been a part of our system, including some of our friends here with like Calusa and others that we partner continue with today. And one of the things that I talk about with workforce development is it's one of the community benefits that comes from these things. Now, we have a lot of conversations about how to get governments in a better position, but we need to start talking about households. Because at the end of the day, one of the things that governments are kind of established to set up is to create framework and an ecosystem for households to thrive and to prosper. One of the benefits that can come from energy is bringing those wages and upping the wages so that the quality of work reflects the ambition of the community. You know, we have a lot of ambitious plans that we put together, but execution is something we still need those players and those technical capabilities to deliver on. And so one of my examples of this is Navajo Power spun out a residential solar company called Navajo Power Home. The more I talk about this thing, the more I think it's the future of utilities. Because we created a completely vertical system, because I had been doing off-grid solar for years, but I was doing it through grants, which you guys know. You apply for them, you get them, they get exhausted, and then you're chasing another one again. And that cycle, the solar coaster, as it's talked about, is very, very exhausting. And so we decided to figure out a new model, which we call solar as a service, essentially putting energy service agreements behind that. Now, all of that work, all that development, all the financial expertise are jobs that we need to fill in these positions. And luckily, I was able to find friends, partners, and get connected to build this up. But in creating Navajo Power Home, we've actually been able to create a workforce for these 15 young folks. I call them young, they're a few years younger than I am. But the thing though is, they were going through the same thing, which is they ambitiously went out to learn about their skill set, but they had nowhere to land those skills back at home. And that's something we have to do, is not just talk about these things as theories, but create spaces for our people to fill in those gaps that we know exist in our community. Chance Foster, a general manager, comes from food sovereignty. She was doing a lot of work in farming and ag and all these places to try to better her community, and just happened to come across us and say, I want to learn more about that. And we've been, essentially building up her expertise to become the next general manager of such an ambitious opportunity. She's from the community, she has kids, she has a family that she's trying to keep at home. And the only way to do that is to find jobs that can cover these things. And so this entire crew of folks have been very instrumental in us deploying this map of installations. The Navajo Nation is roughly the size of West Virginia, 28,000 square miles. Each one of those yellow dots is a household that we are powering. We have over 500 households that we are providing services to. Thank you. And we keep asking the question of what is a megawatt power? That's what a megawatt power is on the off-grid side. We've deployed a megawatt of solar in this, very, very conservatively designed equipment, but we had to bring in all the expertises that we've learned over the years to make something like this sustainable. We had to create financing because our customers, like a lot of travel settings, don't have the collateral to be able to go and get traditional commercial lending. And so we had to be able to do these things so that we're making sure that we're creating these jobs, because all those conditions are the precursors to the existence of the job. We have to solve the finance, we have to solve the engineering, we have to solve the logistics if we are to get these things out there like that. And in those challenges, you see the metrics that we're carrying. We have CRMs and we have a back-end data collection system that allowed us to take, every year we take about 100 homes and we work it through the investment tax credit. And we've been able to utilize the ITCE to get some money back from these things. But again, I had to train people and myself on how to do that, because I have no experience in dealing with tax and tax lawyers. But we went out, sought the resource, built the capacity, and now Chance has successfully done her own independent ITC this last year. And so we're going to do another one, and hopefully whatever we have left on the balance sheet, we can kind of get it in there. And we're also thinking about like safe harboring. You know, we have an opportunity before July 4th to really put some energy behind this. And, you know, capital was the limitation we've always had, but we've been able to get around that. To do this effort, we've raised about $8 million to be able to front end the cost for our customers, to design the systems, and to get the capital to deploy this out. Our target is 5,000 homes by 2030. So we want to be able to provide a service. Now, the one thing I always offer with this is when the Solar for All came out, we were talking about how jobs could get deployed. We have the framework and the foundation for how to do that. And I would invite any tribe that wants to have this conversation. We have a warehouse in Flagstaff. We host people all the time. If you want to see how this works and get an intimate view on this, we are a place that you can visit. And so these are some of the metrics that we've created, the jobs, the different things, the customers that are utilizing our service, and then the CO2 that we offset, all metrics that are very important. And so, you know, I could talk a lot more about things, but, you know, if you want to see more conversations that I've had about economies and job development, my marketing team has put together a little, you know, conversation that I had with my community about how economies and workforces are intertwined. So I appreciate it. Thank you to Alliance for the invitation today. Yeah.